Arthur Sinclair's face mottled, the flush of expensive whiskey and indignation rising from his starched collar. He was a man who built empires on handshakes and leveraged buyouts, a man who saw emotion as a debit on a balance sheet. And I, his daughter, was a catastrophic, unaudited liability. "That is enough, Mara," he said. His voice, usually so resonant, was thin. He was trying for command, but it cracked, revealing the reedy panic underneath. "Enough," my laugh was a short, sharp bark. "I haven't even started." I advanced on him, and he physically recoiled, his back hitting the credenza. The crystal bowl on his desk rattled. "You stand there in my office. Oh wait, no, you redecorated after you and your lawyers strong-armed me out. You stand there and you lie to my face about a party celebrating my own corporate execution." "It's business," he hissed, finding a sliver of his old bluster. "It's not personal, you were volatile, unpredictable. The board wanted stability. Seraphina provides that. Stability. The word was a euphemism for malleable, for trophy, for someone who didn't fight back in board meetings. Stability," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "You mean she nods when she's supposed to and doesn't scare the old money fossils you golf with. You stole my company, Dad. You handed the keys to your bed warmer and told me to be a good girl about it. I will not have you speak about my wife that way. Then maybe you should have married someone who wasn't a fucking corporate parasite." The air vibrated. He'd never been hit with such unadulterated venom from me. Not like this. His hand actually rose, his fingers splayed, and for a heart-stopping second, I thought he would strike me. The shadow of it hung in the air between us, thick with the smell of old leather and his sour breath. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, a tight, cold baring of teeth. "Go on," I whispered. "Do it. Show me exactly who you are." His hand faltered, dropping to his side limp. He had been defeated, not by my anger but by his own cowardice. He couldn't even commit to the violence he'd started. You're not welcome here, Mara," he stammered, smoothing his jacket, a pathetic attempt to regain his composure. "This merger is the most important deal of my life. I will not have you jeopardize it." "Your life's most important deal," I murmured, the rage calcifying, hardening from a raging fire into a diamond-sharp spike of ice. "Funny, it was my life's work, and you just put a price tag on it." I turned, my back straight, my shoulders rigid. I walked toward the door, my heels sounding like gunshots on the hardwood floor. "You're right about one thing," I said, my hand on the heavy brass knob. I looked back at him, a final, appraising glance. He looked small, a man drowning in a suit he could no longer fill. "It's not personal. It's just business." I left him there, surrounded by the trappings of his stolen victory, with the cream-colored invitation lying on the floor between us like a declaration of war. Kaelen's POV, the boxing ring smelled like sweat, iron, and the sharp, coppery tang of yesterday's blood. It was the only place my thoughts ever lined up properly. Jab, jab, cross, pivot, ribs, hook. My trainer, Mick, grunted as my glove connected with the focus mitt, the thwack echoing in the otherwise empty gym. "Someone piss in your protein shake, Kael," Mick grunted, repositioning. He was all grizzle and scar tissue, the only man I paid to hit me. "Just thinking," I grunted back, ducking a simulated swing and driving an uppercut into the pad. "That's your problem. You think too much." I danced back, my breath hissing through my teeth. He was right, I was thinking. I was thinking about Arthur Sinclair. About the fat, smug grin he'd worn at the last tech summit. I was thinking about the news that had hit the wire this morning. Sinclair Acquisitions finalizes hostile takeover of NexusCore. Hostile was the right word. I'd watched Mara Sinclair build NexusCore from a single, brilliant algorithm into a fortress. I'd tried to acquire her myself 3 times, not through hostile takeovers but through partnership. She'd refused every time, her emails always polite, sharp, and utterly final. I respected that. I respected her. She was a builder. A creator. Her father, Arthur, was a vulture. He only knew how to feed on what others had killed, or in this case what he'd managed to stab in the back. "Again," Mick ordered. I went in, the rhythm of the fight taking over. Jab, cross, slip, body. I was thinking about the invitation that had arrived at my office yesterday, embossed with the Sinclair crest. A reunion, it called itself. A celebration of the merger. It was a power play. An invitation from Arthur to all his rivals, a message that said, "I won, come watch me feast." And the hostess, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Sinclair, the audacity was so profound it was almost admirable. He hadn't just taken his daughter's company, he'd given her title, her legacy, to his new wife. A woman whose only corporate credential was a flawlessly executed marriage contract. Thwack. "You're gonna break my wrist," Mick complained, shaking his hand. "He's throwing a party," I said, breathing hard, the sweat stinging my eyes. "Celebrating the steal." "So," Mick lowered the mitts. "Rich assholes throw parties, water is wet. What's it to you? You lost the bid." "He didn't just win," I said, pulling off my gloves, the damp leather peeled from my skin. "He gutted her, and now he's dancing on the corpse." I stalked over to the bench, grabbing my water bottle. The invitation was sitting in my gym bag, a pristine, arrogant rectangle. I was supposed to be in Tokyo tomorrow, closing a deal that would make the Nexus Score acquisition look like chump change. But Arthur Sinclair was throwing a party. And Mara Sinclair, the only true genius in that entire godforsaken family, had just been publicly executed. A slow, cold smile, one that Mick always said made me look like a shark, spread across my face. "Change of plans, Mick," I said, grabbing my towel. "Cancel my flight to Tokyo." "What, Kael, you can't. I'm going to a party." My apartment was a glass box in the sky, a stark white-and-chrome antithesis to my father's dark wood mausoleum. It was usually a fortress of clinical calm. Tonight, it felt like a cage. I stood under a scalding hot shower, the water beating against my skin, trying to wash away the sticky sweet smell of my father's expensive betrayal. It didn't work, the chill was deeper. It was in my bones, it's just business. The water turned cold. I didn't flinch. I let the icy needles prick my skin, forcing my breath to steady, my thoughts to sharpen. The rage had burned itself out, leaving that familiar, glittering core of purpose. He was right. It was just business. And he had just made a very, very bad business decision. He thought I was volatile, unpredictable. He thought I was a liability. He had no idea. He'd only ever dealt with my affection. He had never, not once, had to deal with my undivided, calculating attention. I stepped out of the shower. The bathroom was a fog of steam, but my reflection in the mirror was already clearing. My eyes were dark, the pupils blown wide, ringed by an angry red. I looked haunted. I looked hunted. Good. I walked into my closet, the cold marble chilling my bare feet. My wardrobe was a militant line of blacks, grays, and sharp, structured navies, but my hand went past them all, to the back, to a garment bag I hadn't touched in years. It was a dress from another life. A dress I'd had commissioned for the Nexus Score launch party, the one I'd skipped because I'd found a critical flaw in the source code at the last minute. I unzipped the bag. It wasn't a reunion dress. It wasn't a stakeholder dress. It was a declaration. It was silk, but it looked like liquid metal. The color was a deep, impossible shade of crimson, the color of arterial blood. It was sleeveless, with a neckline that plunged in a sharp, geometric V and a back that was almost entirely gone. It wasn't designed to be pretty. It was designed to be seen. It was armor. I slid it on. The silk was cool against my still damp skin, clinging like a second, more dangerous pelt. I stared at my reflection. The woman staring back was not darling. She was not dramatic. She was the goddamn founder. I swept my wet hair back, slicking it into a severe, tight knot at the nape of my neck. I put on earrings, long, sharp daggers of black onyx. My makeup was minimal, save for my mouth. I painted it a red so dark it was almost black. My phone buzzed on the vanity. A text from my old head of security, a man I'd poached from Mossad and paid a disgusting amount of money. A man who, unlike my father, understood loyalty. GUSTLISTPDF, a small, cold smile touched my new lips. Arthur had changed the locks, but he hadn't scrubbed my executive-level access from the security mainframe. His mistake. I opened the file. And there, near the bottom, nestled among the venture capitalists and the tech bloggers, was a name that made my pulse stop just for a beat. Kaelen Vance. So, the shark was circling. I grabbed my keys. This wasn't a reunion. It was an opportunity. The Sinclair estate was lit up like a landing strip. Valets in crisp black uniforms ran circles, parking a relentless stream of six-figure cars. The air hummed with the sound of an actual, non-ironic string quartet, playing something aggressively classical from the lawn. It smelled of night-blooming jasmine, damp grass, and the sickly sweet perfume of old money. I bypassed the valet, parking my matte black motorcycle, a brutalist piece of machinery that looked utterly alien against the manicured boxwoods, in a service alley half a mile away. I didn't use the front door. My old security credentials worked exactly as planned on the digital keypad of the kitchen entrance. The staff, all new, all hired by Seraphina, were too busy plating hundreds of identical, fussy-looking appetizers to notice one woman in a blood-red dress walking through the chaos with absolute purpose. I moved through the service corridors, my heels silent on the tiled floors, a ghost in my own machine. I emerged into the main hall, stepping out from behind a massive, grotesque floral arrangement that looked like it had eaten a small rainforest. And there it was, my formality. The ballroom was packed, a sea of black ties and jewel-toned gowns. Laughter, high and brittle, bounced off the coffered ceilings. My father was holding court by the champagne fountain, his laugh a booming, false ha-ha-ha. And there she was, Seraphina. She was wearing white. Of fucking course. A virginal, diamond-encrusted column of white silk that probably cost more than my first server array. She was draped on my father's arm, her head tilted, smiling that placid, calculated smile as some old banker kissed her hand. She looked stabilizing. She looked like a flawless porcelain doll, empty and perfect. My stomach twisted, a bitter, acidic knot. This was my legacy. This was my celebration, and a mannequin was hosting it. I needed air. I needed a plan. I slipped through the crowd, a streak of crimson moving against the tide of muted blues and blacks. People turned. I felt their eyes, small, curious stings on my skin. They didn't recognize me, not yet. I was just a woman, an unfamiliar variable in their closed system. I made it to the terrace, stepping out into the cool night air. The music was softer here. The scent of jasmine was stronger. They really should have checked the service entrance logs. The voice was low, laced with an amusement so dry it was almost sarcastic. It came from the shadows to my left. I didn't startle, I simply turned. Kaelen Vance was leaning against a marble pillar, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, but no tie, the top two buttons of his white shirt undone. He looked less like a guest and more like a predator who had wandered in from the wilderness. His eyes, a startling, intelligent gray, raked over me, from the slicked-back hair to the murderous red of my dress. He didn't look surprised, he looked validated. Kaelen Vance, I said, my voice was steady. I figured you'd be in Tokyo. His mouth quirked. And missed the party of the year. He took a step out of the shadows. That's a hell of a dress, Mara. Or should I say, former CEO Sinclair. Just Mara will do, I said, moving to the balustrade, my back to him. I looked out over the lawn at the glittering, oblivious crowd. And you, enjoying the formality. The canapés are mediocre and the conversation is lethal, he murmured, coming to stand beside me. Not too close, but close enough that I could smell him. Not cologne. Just clean, sharp soap, expensive whiskey, and something metallic. Ozone. But the entertainment, he said, his gaze fixed on me, is shaping up to be spectacular. Mara's POV, I turned my head, my eyes locking with his. Kaelen Vance was a problem. He wasn't like the braying jackals inside. He didn't operate on inherited wealth or social niceties. He operated on leverage. And right now, I was standing on a terrace I wasn't invited to, looking like I was about to commit a felony. It was a hell of a lot of leverage. And what do you find so entertaining? I asked, my voice ablade. He smiled, a slow, appreciative curl of his lips. It was the first genuine expression I'd seen all night. A ghost at the feast, he said, taking a sip of his whiskey. The ice clinked softly. I admire the audacity, I always have. My father's audacity, you mean, inviting you. Inviting everyone. Oh, his is boring, Kaelen dismissed, waving a hand. Standard issue corporate sociopathy. Yours, on the other hand, crashing your own execution in a dress made from your enemy's blood. That's New, a tiny spark of humor, cold and sharp, ignited in my chest. It's just crimson, Vance, don't get poetic. Is it? He leaned one hip against the balustrade, turning to face me fully. The light from the ballroom caught the gray in his eyes, turning them to polished steel. You're not here to cry into the champagne, Mara. You're not here to make a scene. You're here to, what? Burn it all down. Tempting, I admitted, my gaze drifting back to the party. My father was now clinking glasses with Senator Hayes. Seraphina was laughing, her hand on the senator's arm, stabilizing. But burning it down is messy, I continued, thinking aloud. And it destroys the assets. I'm not here to destroy my company. No, Kaelen agreed, his voice dropping. You're here to take it back. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. I looked at him, really looked at him. We had been rivals for 3 years. We'd sniped at each other in the press, poached each other's engineers, and bid against each other on every decent startup in the valley. I respected him, I also didn't trust him. And why, I asked, would you care one way or the other? Because, he said, finishing his drink in one smooth swallow, I hate Arthur Sinclair. He set the glass down on the stone rail with a definitive click. I hate old money parasites who think building something means signing a check. He didn't just screw you, Mara. He screwed the entire market by taking your tech and handing it to a board of dinosaurs who are going to mismanage it into oblivion. He was right. That was the deepest cut. Not the money, not the title. The fact that they were going to ruin my work. So, he said, you've got a plan, I can see it. It's clicking away behind those very angry, very beautiful eyes. You found a way in. What's next? A public speech, a quiet word with the SEC. I don't need your help, Kaelen. I know, he said, and the lack of ego in the statement surprised me. But this is a two-front war. You're the brilliant founder, the rightful heir. But you're also the volatile, unpredictable daughter he just had publicly disinherited. They'll spin it, they'll say you're hysterical. He was right again. The knot in my stomach tightened. But me, he continued, a dangerous glint in his eyes. I'm not family, I'm just a concerned competitor. A rival who is very interested in the stability of a company that just swallowed a massive share of the market. A rival who might, for instance, ask Senator Hayes why NexusCore's new leadership just terminated its government security contracts. My head snapped toward him. They what? Kaelen's smile was gone. His expression was grim. Got the alert an hour ago. Seraphina's first executive order. My guess is she found a more lucrative partner, probably foreign, definitely less regulated. They hadn't just stolen my company, they were gutting it. Selling it for parts. That wasn't just business, that was desecration. The ice in my veins began to boil. Where, I asked, my voice deadly soft, is Senator Hayes? Kaelen's shark-like smile returned. Right inside. Holding a glass of champagne, looking perilously, unwarned, he gestured toward the ballroom. After you. Kaelen's POV, I watched her walk. The word walk was an insult, she moved. The red dress rippled, a fluid, disruptive force cutting through the stagnant air of the ballroom. She didn't look like a ghost anymore. She looked like a Valkyrie come to collect the dead. I'd told her the truth. I hated Arthur Sinclair. I hated his smug, self-satisfied face, his inherited everything, his complete inability to innovate. He was a tombstone, and he just tried to bury the most brilliant mind of our generation under it. But I hadn't told her the whole truth. It wasn't just about the market. It wasn't just about hating Arthur. I was here because of her. I'd spent 3 years trying to beat her, and it was the most intellectually stimulating fight of my life. Watching her father snatch her queen off the board in an illegal, underhanded move. It wasn't just wrong, it was boring. And now, here she was, back on the board, a rogue piece. I followed her, keeping a small, strategic distance. She was a heat-seeking missile aimed directly at Senator Hayes. The senator was a blowhard, but he chaired the Armed Services Tech Committee. He took NexusCore's government contracts very seriously. And he had no idea they'd just been cancelled by the woman currently smiling at him. I saw Arthur spot her first. His glass, halfway to his mouth, stopped. The blood drained from his face, leaving that blotchy, whiskey-red mottle. He looked like he'd seen an actual apparition. Seraphina noticed his gaze. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing as she followed his line of sight. She saw Mara. The doll-like placidity cracked, just for a second. Underneath was something hard and cold. Something familiar. Ah, there was the woman who would gut a multi-billion-dollar company's security division for a quick payout. Mara didn't look at them. Not yet. Her focus was absolute. She slipped through a cluster of bankers and reached the senator just as he was turning, his mouth open to greet a new well-wisher. "Senator Hayes," Mara's voice cut through the din. It wasn't loud, but it had a frequency that just sliced. The senator turned, he blinked, clearly not placing her. "Young lady," he boomed, all false bonhomie. "Mara Sinclair," she said, not Mara Sinclair. She claimed the name, weaponized it. "Founder and former CEO of Nexuscore." The senator's smile froze. He knew that name. "My goodness," he said, glancing nervously toward Arthur, who was now frozen in a rictus of panic. I wasn't aware you'd be here." "Neither was my father," Mara said, her smile as sharp as her earrings. "I just had a quick question for you, Senator. As the chair of the tech committee, I was wondering what your thoughts were on Nexuscore's new stabilizing leadership." She had him. He was trapped. I leaned against a pillar, folding my arms. This was better than boxing. "Well," he stammered, "Arthur Sinclair is a titan, and his new wife, Seraphina. A lovely woman." "She is, isn't she?" Mara agreed, her voice dripping with acidic pleasantry. "So lovely, and so efficient. Did you know, in her first act as acting CEO, she terminated the DoD and DHS security contracts? Effective immediately." The silence that fell around them was sudden and absolute. The string quartet seemed to falter. Senator Hayes's face went from pale to a deep, alarming purple. What? Terminated, Mara repeated. I believe the words unprofitable legacy agreements were used. I'm just so relieved our national security is in such stable, business-savvy hands, aren't you? And that was my cue. I pushed off the pillar. "Senator," I said, strolling into the kill zone. "Kaelen Vance, Apex Dynamics, I heard the same rumor. My board is concerned. A breach in Nexuscore's firewall now would expose half the federal database." Hayes looked from Mara, the furious, dispossessed founder, to me, the concerned, powerful rival. He wasn't a fool, he was a politician. He saw exactly what this was. He turned, his eyes zeroing in on Arthur Sinclair, who was now being propelled forward by a white-faced, furious Seraphina. The party was over. Arthur and Seraphina arrived, a matched set of pale rage. The small bubble of silence around us had expanded. The music had died, the quartet's bows hovering over their strings. "Senator," Arthur blustered, trying to plaster on his host's smile. It looked like a grimace. "I see you've met my daughter." The word came out like he was spitting out a fish bone. Mara was just congratulating me, Seraphina purred, sliding her hand into the crook of Arthur's arm. She was trying to project unity. She just looked like a high-class parasite clinging to its host. "Not congratulating," Mara corrected, her voice clear and carrying. "Informing, I was just letting the senator know about your bold, new direction for the company, canceling federal contracts. Risky. What is your play, Seraphina? Selling the source code to the highest bidder." "That is a slanderous accusation," Seraphina gasped, her porcelain mask cracking. A flush crept up her throat. "You are hysterical. You're trespassing." "She's right, Dad," Mara said, her gaze fixed on her father, ignoring the wife completely. "I am trespassing. But she," Mara flicked her gaze to Seraphina, "is committing corporate treason. And she's doing it with your name." "This is slander," Arthur bellowed. "Security, get her out of my house." Two beefy-looking men in ill-fitting suits started to move through the crowd. "Senator Hayes," Kaelen said, his voice casual but loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you're looking for a new, stable, American-based security partner, Apex Dynamics would be happy to step in. We would never, for instance, consider our federal contracts unprofitable." Hayes's eyes, small and hard, went from Arthur's apoplectic face to Kaelen's cool, predatory smile. "Mr. Vance," the senator said, his voice a low growl. "We'll be in touch." He then fixed Arthur with a look of pure, unadulterated political fury. "Arthur, my office, 8 a.m. Monday, and you will bring your new CEO with you. And a very, very good explanation." He turned and strode out of the ballroom, the crowd parting for him like water. The security guards had reached Mara. They hesitated, looking at Arthur for confirmation. Mara just laughed. A low, genuine laugh. She looked at Seraphina, whose face was a mask of hatred. She looked at her father, who just looked broken, a puppet whose strings had been cut. "You didn't need to call security, Dad," Mara said. "I was just leaving." She turned, her crimson dress flashing. She didn't spare me a glance. She didn't need to. The first shot had been fired, and it was a direct hit. She walked out of the ballroom, not through the kitchen, but straight out the front door. Every eye in the room followed her. She left behind a dead party, a furious senator, a shell-shocked rival, and two new, very powerful, very public enemies. I watched her go, and for the first time in a decade, I had no idea what was going to happen next. And I couldn't fucking wait.